Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art and culture, and this is Billboard Breakdown. Now, first, a little bit of housekeeping. As some of you fans are probably very much aware, the episode of Billboard Breakdown from last week is now blocked in all countries because Sony decided they didn't like my usage of Little Mix, even though I did give it Best of the Week. I was tempted just to drop and re-upload the video, but at this current moment, I also have the entire script and the attached music videos on my blog for that episode anyway, so you can head over to www.spectrum-pulse.ca, check it out there, and just imagine my dulcet tones saying all of it if you haven't heard that episode already before that got blocked all over the world and my appeal got rejected. And I say all this because, by the nine hells, I do not want to talk about the top 10 right now. Once again, Closer by the Chainsmokers featuring Halsey is at number 1. 12 weeks, people. I mean, come on. Even though it's getting pushed back on streaming and is clearly peaked on radio, and yet, for some reason, it's leading sales with the lowest actual sales number in nearly 11 years, and that's because while Starboy by The Weeknd and Daft Punk is gaining in airplay and is solid across the board in every other category, it's just not picking up fast enough to tear into that margin and remain stuck at number 2. And Heathens by 21 Pilots is even worse off. With a sharper peak in airplay, weakening sales, and dying airplay, I can see it falling from number 3 quite fast. Now this opens up things for Let Me Love You by DJ Snake featuring Justin Bieber, which did hold on to its airplay traction with some sales gains, but might be too little too late as it lost on streaming and remains at number 4. This takes us to Broccoli by Drum featuring Lil Yachty. It had kind of a weird week, up and down on the radio, slipping on sales and streaming, really no idea how it held on to number 5. Part of it's because Side to Side by Ariana Grande and Nicki Minaj muscled up to number 6, with momentum in every single category and really strong YouTube, and it managed to shove back Bruno Mars's 24 Karat Magic down to number 7. Look, it's got great sales, solid radio, but that's not enough if your streaming is tanking these days, even if I do really like this song. Unfortunately, it's facing the challenge of Juju on That Beat by Zay Hilfiger and Zayn McCall, rising up to number 8 thanks to the fact that people are still buying this, and now it has streaming momentum, which is just fantastic. And this takes us to the first of 2 new top 10 entries, and unquestionably the better one at number 9, Black Beatles by Ray Shrimmer and Gucci Mane. And folks, look, even though I've got a bit of a reputation with these guys, this is clearly their best song, one I actually kind of tolerate. If they're gonna break into the top 10 for the first time with anything, I'd honestly prefer it be this than No Type or No Flex Zone. It's got sales and streaming traction, and while airplay is lagging heavily, the mannequin challenge thing has given this song some extra legs. We'll see if the overplay eventually kills it for me, but for now, let's deal with the much bigger issue by our second new arrival in the top 10, Fake Love by Drake. Arguably his worst ever top 10 single. It's here because for some reason it is ruling streaming, even though sales have dropped off quite sharply. Let's hope that everybody just takes the hit and gets sick of this really fast, because I'm not sure I could take much more of Drake's mediocrity. Hotline Bling was one thing, this is entirely something else. And on that note, our losers and dropouts. Lots of the latter this week, and sadly most of them are actually kind of good. Into You by Ariana Grande finally makes its exit, along with Why You Always Hatin' by YG featuring Drake and Kamaya, This Girl and Kungs and Cooking on 3 Burners, and Hold Up by Beyonce. Granted, they took with them Controlla by Drake, Lockjaw by French Montana featuring Kodak Black, and You and Me by Mark E. Basie featuring G-Eazy, but still, not net positive. And as for losers, mixed bag here. It Don't Hurt Like It Used To by Billy Currington dropping to 81 isn't all that surprising, nor is What You Mean I by Day Day falling to number 99. They've both lasted some time. Then there's our debuts dropping off, with Hallelujah by Pentatonix falling hard to 77, and Shout Out to My Ex by Little Mix hitting 86. I expect this to rebound when the album drops in a few weeks, at least by my projections. What kind of surprised me was I Know Somebody by Low Cash falling early to 82. Thought it might have a little bit more staying power, even if I don't really like the song. Of course, when you flip over to our gains, it starts to make a little bit more sense. Country radio is reloading for the rest of the season, and thus Keith Urban's Blue Ain't Your Color surged up to 25, and Setting the World on Fire by Kenny Chesney and Pink jumped up to 29, although I expect these changes to be short-lived given the CMAs happened. Beyond that, the rest of our gains here came off debuts. It's a damn shame nearly all of them suck. The best of them was Say You Won't Let Go by James Arthur up to 85, but that's kind of overshadowed by No Heart by 21 Savage and Metro Boomin up to 71, or Sneakin' by Drake and 21 Savage up to 28, or Fake Love by Drake breaking the top 10. At least our returning entries are pretty decent, with Love Me Now by John Legend making a brief revival to 98, and Cool Girl by Tove Lo returning to the charts yet again to at 100, but I don't really see either of them lasting that long, even if they are pretty decent songs. Granted, I don't see many of our new arrivals lasting that long either, hopefully good reason, because this doesn't really look like a good week. Starting off with number 97, Blessed Up by Meek Mill.
And niggas want me gone, but I'm still alive. Wake up every morning feeling blessed up. Pull up in the Holy Ghost, cause I'm blessed up. I'ma do the most, cause I'm blessed up. Had to school my niggas out the hood, now we all eating good. We good, cause we blessed up.
You know, this is all Drake's fault. If he had effectively ethered Meek Mill's career last year, destroyed him so thoroughly that there was no hope of him ever coming back, we would not be in this situation, where Meek Mill now has 7 new songs debuting on the Hot 100 this week. Good thing all those 0 requests I got to review his mixtape DC4 are gonna get answered here, because now there's a full half of that mixtape on the charts right now. Now, I'll give Meek Mill some credit for at least embracing some bombast. The swells of strings on the hook that lead to an oddly flattened melody against the sparse beat on the verses, that's not bad. But I'll take it all away for pretty much everything else. The problem with Meek Mill has never been his energetic yelling, it's just that he's not visceral or exciting or raw, just volume for its own sake. And when so much of his content here is bragging about cars and dissing you specifically in the second verse, I'm sorry, just tune out, it's not very interesting to me. Not a bad song, I like some of the bombast, but not particularly memorable either. Number 96, Chantaje by Shakira featuring Maluma.
Puro chantaje, puro chantaje. Vas libre como el aire. No soy de ti ni de nadie.
So immediately we get a quick moment of respite courtesy of my friend Shakira, who along with this young Colombian kid broke big on the Latin charts this week with Chantaje, apparently intended as the lead-off single for her next album, which looks to be entirely in Spanish, with the title translating to Blackmail. It's a shame this is not better across the board, because I really did not groove to this track. Forget the mostly limp, watery percussion line, the primary melodic fragment anchoring it is a squawking chipmunk vocal that I got annoying in record time. And that's otherwise a shame, because the rest isn't that bad, with Shakira and Maluma having some decent chemistry even if the song never really quite ignites for me. A shame because the lyrics are actually kind of intriguing, with Shakira holding all the power in the relationship, duh, and that being considered pure blackmail for this guy. Okay, the idea is not bad, but I get the feeling the execution here either doesn't translate or just didn't connect for me on some level. As a whole, man, I hope this is not the lead-off single going forward, because Shakira, she's really capable of so much better. Number 93, Blue Notes by Meek Mill. Towing them pictures and serving them addicts. That was exciting to me. I'm so excited to be. Started with nothing, we had to inspire the beat. Niggas, they fly to me. I'm getting to it, feel like the man. I got the plan. I call the shooters, they out with the van. Play with the squad, get pop like a sand. Pop like a perk, I'm going ham. Now we return to our Meek Mill show, already in progress, and get something I didn't really expect. A guitar of some kind. More specifically, it comes from a pretty reserved bluesy hook from UK blues musician Snowy White, and it's actually pretty understated against the gentle backdrop of some organ. And so of course Meek Mill has to shout about money, his blue notes as it is, selling drugs with the squad, buying jewelry, and the rest of his generic subject matter over this beat. Of course, the second verse has him clearly sick and tired of all this struggle and then getting backstabbed, but I don't get all that invested in it because Meek Mill doesn't seem to know how to modulate, ramp up emotion, or restrain it to fit with this instrumental, where his shouting just does not work at all. Ugh, there is potential of this, but again, Meek Mill doesn't seem versatile enough to show how to make it work, so yeah, probably pass. Number 88, Star of the Show by Thomas Rhett.
And everybody's wondering and wanting to know what's your name? Who's that girl with the prettiest smile in the world? But what gets me the most is you don't even know that you are the star of the show.
Oh, I was not expecting this, mostly because, again, I don't cover deluxe issues or reissues of most albums, and even if I did, I probably would have never covered one of Thomas Rhett's atrocious sophomore album Tangled Up from last year. One of the most confused, lazy, insulting messes that I've ever had the misfortune to cover on this show. And so, of course, he sneaks a song off the deluxe edition onto the charts after his single Vacation failed in spectacular fashion, didn't even make the Hot 100, and yet if this song had been on the album, it might have had a chance of being a little bit better, at least in my books. Believe it or not, this isn't a bad song. Oh, it's got the production problems that Tangled Up has, with the cheap fake percussion and the snaps, the overlayered backing vocals that don't sound like Thomas Rhett, a guitar line that sounds the furthest thing from country, but you know what? I'm a sucker for some good steel guitar on this song, something of a real melody to it, and lyrics that aren't obnoxiously awful. Sure, it's a pale imitation of She Don't Know She's Beautiful by Sammy Kershaw, or even What Makes You Beautiful by One Direction, but tepid, love-struck Thomas Rhett, pretty much the only version of him that I can remotely tolerate. So yeah, this isn't all that bad. It's actually kind of decent. I'll take it. Number 84, The Difference by Meek Mill featuring Quavo and Desiigner.
They know the difference. They know the difference. They know the difference. They know the difference. You got a rape and I got a rape, but they know the difference. Put the machine in 2016, so they know the difference. 2016. The diamonds are shining, the rollie is clean, so they know the difference. 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 Your bitches is bad and my bitch is bad, but we know the difference.
And so we return to the Meek Mill show once again, plus one part Migos member and one part Future ripoff. And I'm sorry, given how guttural that vocal in the intro sounds, it sounds like he's saying dick, dick, dick. Shame the song can't be remotely that interesting outside of your standard desaturated trap beat and backing tone, complete with Desiigner ad-libbing all over the song. As for the content, the hook is based around Meek Mill's audience able to tell the difference between his wealth and somebody else's, which in person might be kind of true, but in these songs, I doubt it. All the bragging just kind of blurs together. Then again, that's raising the question of who the you is on this song. I get the impression that it's another rapper this time around, because I sure as hell don't own a Wraith, but it's very telling on a song about knowing the difference that nobody ever describes what those differences actually are. Oh, and Quavo's also on the song. His verse is a little bit more modulated and detailed, but it's still pretty forgettable. He's definitely done better. Overall, pass. Number 75, On the Regular by Meek Mill.
Sticking to the basics, rock a lot of chains, do a lot of things, bottom by the case, sticking to the basics, do it on the regular, fucking on the regular, dripping on the regular, tripping on the regular, cannon on the regular, sipping on the regular, never smoking regular, nigga we ain't regular.
You know, I can't be the only one who thinks that it's kind of hilarious that Meek Mill tried to get his producers to remix Carmina Burana, chopping it to shreds with blocky percussion and a trap beat, and yet in doing so it sounds so ridiculously clumsy and actually ends up neutering the dramatic swell of that iconic song. All the more evidence that Meek Mill doesn't know what to do with good production when it's staring him right in the face, but that would ignore everything Meek Mill is saying here, talking about everything he does on the regular, which he taps off by saying that he's not regular, which I'm either expected to think that he's a liar or needs a lot more fiber in his diet. Beyond that, it's really just more of the same wrapped over a sample that's easily timeless and interesting and more than anything that Meek Mill will ever say or do, and that he manages to ruin this sample. In other words, skip it. Number 73, Two Birds, One Stone by Drake.
Time to get it right. It's only me, but I'm seeing foreshadows in the light. My demons visit me every night. To the Most High, I'm forever indebted. I know I gotta pay something. I know that day's coming. I put it all in the music because if I don't say it here, then I won't say nothing. Can feel my hand getting tired from holding the grudges.
So we interrupt the Meek Mill show with an interject from the rapper who should have rightly ended him and who clearly has some beef to resolve with shots aimed at Meek Mill, Kid Cudi, and Pusha T? Okay, we'll get to that in a second, but first let's handle the peripheral stuff on a rap diss. Production, otherwise pretty thin, with a sparse tapping beat, a pile-up of vocal snippets containing some semblance of melody, and a slightly glitchy layer trying to make it sound more interesting than it actually is. And that's really indicative of the content on this song too. As the first major part of the verse, Drake drones on about how he needs to refocus on his life, snap back at other rappers more, reflect on his come up and how so many rappers can't match the stacks of wealth he now has, and wow, if this was was delivered with any sort of intensity I might potentially care. Let's get to the actual disses here, and let's start off with the Kid Cudi controversy. Now, is it in bad taste to go after Kid Cudi for his depression when he's checked into rehab, especially when Drake missed the sitting duck target, a speeding bullet to heaven? Duh, of course it is. But number one, it's a diss track. I'm not expecting good taste, and I'm also a little bit amazed that this is what knocked Drake off his moral pedestal with so many pop fans, given that with his framing for the past year and a half, it's always placed him as a total dick, especially in recent years. Now, the diss that interested me a lot more was the calling out of Pusha T for lack of authenticity in his bars about cocaine trafficking. Even though people tied to Pusha T back in the Clips days have been busted for multi-million-dollar cocaine rings before. Now look, all rappers exaggerate to some extent, but Pusha T has always struck me as one who actually spoke with enough detail and authority to be somewhat believable. And he's also a mainstream accessible rapper who's got the skill and intensity to take Drake apart. In other words, okay, diss track, but King Push, that can't come fast enough. Number 70, Offended by Meek Mill featuring Young Thug and 21 Savage.
I just might go ahead and let this little bitch suck my dick till it tickle me. I just might go ahead and meet me a Sprite with some lean like it's chemistry. Goddamn, I had 4 hoes at one time, they were drilling me.
And now we're back, this time teaming up with Young Thug and 21 Savage. And wait a second, didn't 21 Savage just work with Drake on This Week? He got a debut boost this week. See, that's another thing I miss about rap beefs. The camps used to be more easily defined among the lower tier rappers here. Sure, you had wild cards who were good enough to work with everyone without repercussions, but 21 Savage does not belong in that category. But really, this is more of a Young Thug song than anyone else's. He's got the hook, he's got the first verse, and you think that an instrumental could remotely flatter his more interesting flow instead of this atonal piano line and chunky trap beat. Of course, then we got lines about 4 hoes drilling him, and presumably how he's about taking your girl. She could have easily been one of those people drilling Young Thug. Then we've got Meek Mill, starts off with an auto-tune flow, he flubs rhymes, starts yelling about killing people, and then we've got 21 Savage trying to crank up the menace as the beat slows back, which could be remotely interesting if he could manage to consistently stay on the beat. In other words, I've long ago stopped caring about this sort of thing. Next, number 68, Froze by Meek Mill featuring Lil Uzi Vert and Nicki Minaj.
Hey, you know how froze that is. Hey, look at my wrist. Oh, yeah. You know how froze that is. Hey, look at my fist. Oh, yeah. You know how froze that is.
Okay, you know what needs something that needs to die in the discussion of gross wealth in hip-hop? The description of diamonds as ice or frozen. It's been overplayed for decades now. Ice rarely has the sparkle or clarity of good diamonds. And when Nicki Minaj talks about a frozen pussy ring, I'm just like, that's cold as hell down there. Of course, the painfully flubbed rhyme right in the first set of bars in her verse and the gratuitous auto-tune all over this mess. Nicki is kind of disappointing here, but she at least has a little bit more personality than either Lil Uzi Vert sounding generic as hell or like Future through a cloud of auto-tune. He has that bassy mix of very distant hints of melody, and Meek Mill shouting about being so hot he might break the thermometer, or with all these jewels like Hanukkah. Seriously, look, I've long ago given up that Meek Mill will say anything remotely interesting, but all evidence is showing that he just serves to make his collaborators less interesting or good, even by proxy. And we gave this guy a career instead of Denzel Curry for some reason. Why? Number 54, Better Man by Little Big Town. We take our last and very welcome break from Meek Mill to raid right back into the controversy, cause this was the Little Big Town song reportedly written for their lead-off single by Taylor Swift. And aside from taking the title from a far better Pearl Jam song, actually that song came to my mind a lot when listening to this through a few times, because it shows exactly why Pearl Jam were so much more powerful songwriters than Taylor Swift is. Now for one, there are some parallels with that song, which is probably the last thing you want to do. Left alone at home on late nights, lingering regret, frustration at neglect. Except in this case, the protagonist actually runs and spends the song giving this guy the middle finger for not being a better man to keep her, as well as implying there was permanent damage, something that raises all sorts of questions that this song isn't really willing to answer. But it's not really paid as a kiss-off here. The tones are too liquid and gentle and mid-tempo, with that fake beat, a tad too much ghostly reverb, clouds of guitar, and all the more evidence that Little Big Town has settled into the tepid Mirage era of their Fleetwood Mac imitation. And while Karen Fairchild is a good singer enough on the lead, this song should have either ditched the guys in the band, or Taylor Swift should have written a unique sequence for them, perhaps added some different context, because they definitely don't fit in this arrangement that's oddly a lot more simple and a lot less interesting than the Pearl Jam version. As a whole, it's pleasant, but it's also very deeply flawed, and hopefully, gotta be honest, I hope this doesn't stick around. And finally, number 49, Litty by Meek Mill featuring Tory Lanez.
All of my partners is poppin', you know that we Litty, yeah. All of the fours on college, you know that we Litty, yeah. They don't wanna see the squad, they don't wanna see the rain, they don't wanna see a bitch up in the stars like she going out of space.
And now here it is, the last Meek Mill song of the week, and the one with the only person who hates Drake more than Meek Mill. And it looks like their mutual hatred led up to an actually decent song, although it's hard to say thanks to either of these guys here. For one, Meek Mill's content is again not all that interesting, and him saying that he's raping the money raises all sorts of unfortunate implications, especially on a verse where he's simultaneously praising Nicki Minaj for having as much money as Mariah Carey, which she plainly doesn't. Then there's Tory Lanez, which even despite calling out Drake for embracing some basic ass memes, he still feels the need to take shots at women reportedly lying about his dick size on Twitter, which really should be the sort of thing he should ignore than address in his big boasting track in collaboration with Meek Mill. But if I'm gonna praise anything that I really like here, at least the production and hook finally came through. Bring the thicker bombast and the synth to the front against the huge bass on the trap beat, with some synth flourishes that do help lead into Tory Lanez doing his best Travis Scott impression, and honestly, it's pretty damn catchy. And this is really where I pinpointed my issue with Meek Mill. He's got no significant bass in his voice when he's yelling, so I never get any sort of significant intensity from his delivery. Here, well, he's close, which is probably the reason this song fares the best for me, but even in comparison with Tory Lanez, it's not great there. It's more thanks to the hook, and decent here is still pretty far from being actually good, you know? So yeah, I'll take this, but not by much. And that was our week, and wow, entirely too much mediocrity for my taste. For the best, you know, I'm giving it to Litty by Meek Mill featuring Tory Lanez for at least having some bombast, but the honorable mention will be going, and no big surprise here, Star of the Show by Thomas Rhett. I know. Yes, I know, but it's a likable song, and if this was untangled up proper, I might have been kinder to that record as a whole. Worst of the week? Okay, for the disappointment, this is going to Froze by Meek Mill featuring Lil Uzi Vert and Nicki Minaj, with Dishonourable mention going to On the Regular by Meek Mill, but really, a good half of the songs dropped this week from Meek Mill could have qualified for this. Let's just hope they all go away next week so we can get something new and interesting going forward for the final week of this Billboard year coming up next week. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse.